It's 5:11 a.m., August 26, 2024. A 5.4 category earthquake just struck 84 kilometers off of Lisbon, Portugal. At the time, I was lying in bed when the earthquake hit. This is a fair bit earlier than I usually get up, so I suspect I was attuned to the changing energy that was in the air. I heard a few seconds of what sounded like thunder, but I didn't feel any movement. We live approximately 200 meters above sea level and up near Sintra, about 25 kilometers from the heart of Lisbon. But for the rest of the day, I felt an unease, which I attributed to the collective uncomfortability of people. It's shocking, and I think earthquakes have a deep generational fear that's in the Portuguese because of their history with devastating earthquakes. It's common knowledge that Portugal was due for another big earthquake, but still, it's a little strange when you don't know when the big one is coming. But at the same time, you have no idea when it will arrive, nor how catastrophic it will be. The earthquake in Lisbon registered a 5.4 on the Richter scale. To put that in context, moderate earthquakes, 5.0 to 5.9, can cause some damage to poorly constructed buildings, but severe, which is 6.0 to 6.9, do cause damage to a number of moderate, well-built structures in populated areas. The problem is that because of the way Portugal is positioned on the tectonic plates, the offshore region south of mainland Portugal is sandwiched between the Eurasian and the Nubian plates. And Portugal has a history with earthquakes. And by all accounts, they will have future earthquakes. It's just a matter of when and how terrible they're going to be. Now, based on the available reporting, there was minimal to no significant damage reported from the earthquake that struck near Lisbon, Portugal on August 26, 2024. So was this the big one, or is there another one coming? That's the big question. By the way, if you're in Lisbon, be sure to check out Quake. It's a museum that's dedicated to helping understand the 1755 Lisbon Great Quake. It can help you put in perspective what it might have been like to experience an earthquake and to give you some empathy for that situation. I'll put a link in the description. Now, while it's impossible to predict earthquakes with certainty, predicting the future seismic events based on historical data and geological factors, here's what we do know about the potential for future earthquakes in Lisbon. First, there's clear historical precedent. Lisbon has experienced significant earthquakes in the past, most notably the devastating 1755 earthquake, which had an estimated magnitude of between 8.5 to 9. But there have been others. There was a massive earthquake in 1321, another big one in 1531. In 1909, there was a 6.3 Richter scale Benavente earthquake, and then in 1969, a magnitude 7.8 earthquake occurred in the Goring Bank area. These quakes are almost 200 years apart, which leads one to expect another large earthquake somewhere around the ballpark of 2130. So we're not done yet here, Lisbonites. Third, locationally, Lisbon is situated in a seismically active region due to its proximity to the Azores-Gibraltar Transform Fault. Fourth, there is ongoing regular seismic activity in terms of smaller earthquakes. The recent earthquake on August 26, 2024, with a magnitude of 5.4, demonstrates that this region remains seismically active. And let's just make no doubt about it, the presence of seismic events has a deep and storied history in Portugal. But the future of earthquakes in Lisbon will always be colored by what happened in the past, specifically 1755, the Great Lisbon Earthquake. It occurred on November 1st, 1755, and had an estimated magnitude of 8.5 to 9 on the Richter scale. It went down about 8:40 a.m. on All Saints' Day and went on for several minutes. This was at a time when many pious Portuguese were at Catholic Mass. It's a holiday, All Saints' Day. Now, the damage was greatly exacerbated by the tradition of leaving candles burning on All Saints' Day. It was a practice that served to honor and remember deceased loved ones. Even when they went out, they would leave candles burning in houses. So not only was there this massive unanticipated earthquake, but you had people taking mass in church on the day when candles were lit all day long by tradition on a holiday. Next, you have some candles falling from the earthquake, catching fire, and you have a massive catastrophe. Imagine this combo with flammable whale oil. The Portuguese were well known to source whales and do whale harvest fishing off the Azores, and they used whale oil in lanterns at night. And catching fire, the whale oil, you can imagine how truly horrifying that situation would become very quickly, rapidly spiraling out of control. As the blazes got hotter and there was no modern day infrastructure, remember, with fire hoses and bombarders. The people rushed to the sea, deathly afraid of burning alive. Keep in mind, this is on the context that people have of the vision of Revelation where the whole world is going to burn. So they run to the water. This is them thinking the revelation come to life on a religious holiday, no less. God's wrath wiping out the wicked. So the sea receded back as a rare tsunami was about to strike, and it actually hit land about 70 to 90 minutes after the earthquake. And that, of course, was when it was most unexpected. It looks like everything's calm, and then there's this great wave. And so it was a perfect storm, and it killed many people. The earthquake, combined with subsequent fires and the tsunami, almost completely destroyed Lisbon and the surrounding areas. At the time, the total population of Lisbon before the disaster was estimated to be about 200,000 to 275,000 people. But in Lisbon alone, the death toll is estimated between 30 and 40,000 people. So some suggest that the total death toll may have been as high as 70,000 people, and includes about 10,000 people who died in Morocco due to the earthquake reaching the North African coast and the subsequent tsunami on the African coastline. And there are reports that the violent waves even reached as far as Brazil. It's clear that the 1755 Lisbon quake was one of the deadliest in history, causing massive loss of life and destruction across Portugal, parts of Spain, and North Africa. So if Lisbon had about 200,000 people in it and 35,000 died, that's a huge number. And what about the king, Joseph I of Portugal? Wasn't he in church at that time too? Well, a stroke of luck actually helped his fate, but what happened to him is a little heartbreaking. At daybreak on November 1st, 1755, this is hours before the catastrophe, the royal court attended a private mass and left Lisbon to spend All Saints' Day away from the city. And this was on the request of one of the wishes of the king's 4 daughters. And although he was safely away from the city when the earthquake struck, the earthquake actually caused Joseph to develop severe claustrophobia, and he was never again comfortable living inside a walled building. So he actually moved the royal court to an extensive complex of outdoor tents in the hills of Ajuda that later became the Ajuda Palace. But think about that. He wasn't able to live indoors after this earthquake. That's truly horrifying. And it shows you that even the people that lived through the earthquake had deep ramifications and distress. So the earthquake also had a seismic effect on the prevailing beliefs and philosophy. It wiped out almost every important church in the city. And the fact that it struck on a holy day when most people were at church was seen by most as a manifestation of divine wrath, despite Lisbon's red light district in the Alfândega suffering very little harm. Writers of the Enlightenment age were deeply affected as well, in particular Voltaire, the French writer-philosopher who wrote the poem sur le désastre de Lisbonne. He wrote several works on this particular topic, and he thought that the earthquake showed that nature can be capricious and it does not respect human life. If there were to be a happier, more prosperous, and more just world, it would have to be created by human activity. In the end, the vision of the ultra-ambitious Marquis de Pombal helped rebuild Lisbon. The vast destruction allowed a complete rebuild, so it's an old world with a new look. The urban layout of modern Lisbon is largely a result of the city center's complete reconstruction after the devastating 1755 earthquake. It allowed him to build wide streets on a grid system, of which his own statue is indeed the most prominent. Avenida de Liberdade is a good example of this. It's a wide boulevard measuring 90 meters across. It's lined with trees, mosaic sidewalks, fountains, benches, parks, and combined with the Azuelos and the small winding streets nearby, and you have the unmistakable vision of Lisbon. You certainly can't argue with his vision. To rebuild Lisbon in such spectacular fashion in just 1 year, and the unmissable statue of Marquis de Pombal is actually the tallest statue in Lisbon, standing at a total height of 45 meters when including its pedestal. The downtown is beautiful and its charm is undeniable. You certainly can't unremember Lisbon if you've ever been there. And while saúde, the untranslatable term, I can't even say it, for longing or wistfulness for the past that somehow can't be reached is probably not the right term exactly. I don't doubt that the earthquake of Lisbon left something that has permanently marked the Portuguese identity indelibly. If you want to find out more about the Lisbon earthquake, check out the Quake Museum in downtown Lisbon. I'll put a link in the description. You can see where it is on the map. And for us, earthquakes are uncomfortable. They're unknown and unpredictable. And they're big, like the possibility of a boogeyman or a dinosaur under the bed. We're not from an area where earthquakes normally happen. Friends of ours in Lisbon sent a WhatsApp asking if we felt the earthquake, as it was so strong it woke them up. My wife was lying in bed the next night thinking about our kids and about the anxiousness that comes from the unknown. How can you really prepare for something like that? And if you live in Lisbon, it's not a question of if a big earthquake will happen. It's a question of when. So where were you when the earthquake struck? Do you think we're in for a big one? And are you worried about it? What are your experiences with this earthquake? Ultimately, for things out of your control, it's probably best to stay in the present moment. Enjoy life, smile more, be kind. And the next time you're in downtown Lisbon, take a look around and enjoy one of the most gorgeous cities in the world, because it didn't always look this way. Now, if you enjoyed this video, be sure to subscribe, and we'll see you next time, Portugal.